Greetings folks, this right here is the Eluktronics N970TF. This features a desktop CPU, and today's video is a teardown and a teardown only. It is meant to serve those that require a teardown, as this has a desktop processor. I'm going to reveal how to remove that, replace it with something else, as well as removing the inner skeletal system in order to have access to the GPU. We do not have permission to repaste the GPU as this is a review unit, but I was sent a 9900 as well as a Pentium to put in here for thermal and performance testing for you guys. That will be in its own separate video. Again, this is a teardown to serve those that need such a thing, as there's a few little sticking points here that we will cover in this video to make this very easy for the individual to do the teardown. Hopefully enjoy the video, and thanks for watching. First thing we need to do is remove the hot swappable battery and then that bottom panel. There are 6 screws that hold that panel in place. I have already removed those. Here I will use a plastic pry tool to get the bottom panel removal started. You will hear some satisfying clicks and pops, and the panel will remove away just like so. The copper heat pipes and fan that you see on the right hand side is the cooler for the CPU. Next, we need to remove this aluminum cross member here that will hold the CPU and GPU coolers together. Next, remove the 2 black screws that hold the CPU cooling fan onto our chassis. Now remove the 4 screws that hold our CPU cooler onto the CPU itself. Now we still need to disconnect the fan, but it was easier for me to get the cooler slightly removed from the chassis to give my fingers and thumb more room to actually unplug the fan cable itself. Now we'll take a few moments here with some paper towels and isopropyl alcohol and begin to remove some of the old thermal interface material from our original desktop CPU. Removing our socketed CPU here is just as easy as any desktop motherboard out there. I really like this feature, one of my favorite things about this laptop. Next, we're going to put the i9-9900, this is the non-K version, has a 65 watt TDP, breaking the factory seal right here. And what's up with this Intel? No copper slug? I know this is a lower wattage part, but this is still an i9. Anyway, the installation is very simple. Just line up the triangular corners here. Take your time to make sure that the CPU is lined up correctly before latching it down. The rest of the black plastic bottom panel skeletal assembly needs to be removed. All of the black screws here are the same length, and just completely remove every single one. The 4 silver screws that were underneath our battery, left to right, number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Number 3 right here that I am removing, you do not need to remove. Just a heads up. If you happen to have a 2.5-inch drive, please remove that now. Now what I did at this point is slowly begin to lift off on this black plastic skeletal system. It will actually lift off with very little effort with all things considered, but there is 1 screw still holding this in place, and we will need to remove the keyboard ever so slightly in order to access that screw. This is very simple to do. Let's have a look. Right underneath this section here, literally on the other side, I'm going to take my finger and there's this little tab. You just need to click this over so you can begin to remove the keyboard. From there, pull it away from the top, and then there will be several black plastic tabs that will slide in through the bottom. Very simple. Lay it forward on the front edge of the keyboard deck. Remove this single screw here, and then you will be able to remove that black skeletal system very easily. If it were me, after removing this screw, I would probably not put it back in place. That would make it a lot easier for me to replace the thermal paste on the GPU in the future. Now that our screw has been removed, the black plastic skeletal structure comes off very easily, revealing the GPU cooling solution. Now, I will not be repasting this today, as I do not have permission to do so. I'm quite certain that this laptop will go out to other tech reviewers out there, so unless I am told otherwise, we are just going to leave this in place. Overall, pretty nice little cooler here for the 2070 115 watt part. The main skeletal structure panel will snap back into place. Reinstall all of the screws, and do not forget your hard drive. Using something like a coffee filter and some isopropyl alcohol, I'm going to give the cooling solution and the IHS lid of the CPU a final wipe down before applying the Thermo Grizzly Cryonaut. I'm using the pea-size method here. I've done this on hundreds of CPUs, and this will work flawlessly as long as you know what you're doing. Before carefully installing our CPU cooling solution, I'm going to carefully plug in the fan. I did find this to be a little bit easier for me. This is slightly cramped. Perhaps you will have an easier time should you have smaller fingers. Going to reinstall the 2 black screws to hold the fan onto our chassis, the 4 screws over the CPU plate, as well as the 2 screws that hold the cross member in place for our CPU and GPU. Next, we need to reinstall the screw underneath that keyboard, so we're going to flip our N970 over, reinstall that screw, and then carefully snap our keyboard back into the chassis. We are almost done. Flip this over one last time, and there's one last screw that will hold the plastic chassis onto the keyboard itself, as you can see right here. Reinstall the bottom panel access door, bottom tabs in first, the rest will click into place. Reinstall your battery, and then don't forget about those 6 screws that hold everything nice and tight, and that's going to about do it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.